All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. My name is J.R. Otamendi. I am a learning architect here at Mindmarker, and I'll be your co-host this afternoon. We're very excited to have you on board. We have a lot of great information to go over and great panelists. So I cannot wait to get started to share all the good news to you guys. So let's go ahead and begin the webinar by going over the housekeeping rules. As you already figured, all the participants are actually muted. Any questions that you have for the panelists, please use your Q&A box on your control panel. We'll be monitoring those Q&As and we'll bring them accordingly into the conversation or towards the end of the presentation. If you have a question for the host, use the chat feature on your control panel. Again, we'll be looking at those and hopefully addressing them accordingly. If you happen to have some technical issues, because they never happen, right? We never have technical issues. So if you do encounter some of those, make sure to visit support.zoom.us. You got the address on the screen here, or you can call that number 1-888-799-9666 on the screen for support. As you already know, the webinar will be recorded and we'll be providing a link upon the conclusion of the session. All right, the speakers for today, we have Preston Kendall. He's a program manager for the Leadership Development Group at Discover Financial Services. He's a great guy. Cannot wait for him to begin. Yours truly, J.R. Otamendi. Again, I'm a learning architect within the Mindmarker Group and the head of marketing here at Mindmarker, Rob Swint. This is the panel of speakers today, and I'm going to pass it along to Rob so he can go over some of the items of the agenda as well. Go ahead, Rob.
Hey, thanks, J.R. So today, you're going to hear from Preston Kendall talking about their project at Discover, where they reinforce key behaviors. That's the crux of the, or that's going to be the majority of the call today. What he is going to be referencing is they use Mindmarker for reinforcement at Discover. So because you're going to be referring to it, I'm going to explain to you what Mindmarker is first. We're going to save time, or we're going to use time at the end for Q&A. We kept this a pretty tight webinar. We kept it to 30 minutes. With that being said, we are going to spill over with Q&A. So for those of you who only have a half hour, you're going to be able to hear the whole webinar, and we're also going to have a recording afterwards. For those of you who have time to stick around for the Q&A, please do, because we'll keep going as long as Preston's been very generous with his time and said he'll keep going as long as people have good questions.
Happy to help, Rob.
Thanks, Preston. So there's two poll questions here today. I've got to, we're going to launch the poll. Give me a moment. So the first poll question for the audience, right? If you can see it on your screen, what are the biggest training challenges you face going into 2022? So if you, please take an opportunity to respond. Your answers are anonymous, and we're going to take about 30 seconds. And then we'll show you the results. Wow, there's a clear leader so far, as I can see the results coming in. And while we're doing this, we have a great attendance today. I think this is one of our highest attended webinars. So thank you for your responses. I'm going to end the poll. Got a few more that just snuck in. And here we go. Clear leader. So the biggest challenges, the clear leader here was employees unable to dedicate enough time to training, followed by keeping up with demand. That's pretty consistent, and proving the value of training programs. Oh, three-way tie, agreeing on consistent measures of training success, a tie. After the webinar, we plan to share some of this data with you afterwards, so don't feel the need to capture screenshots as quickly as you can. Oh, actually, I realized you didn't get to see the results. Excuse me, everyone. Here are the results, so you can see them for yourself. All right, I'm going to stop sharing, and we'll share this with you afterwards. And move on to the next slide. So, what is a Mindmarker? Mindmarker, so the challenge that we tackle is this one of that you just actually ironically saw on the poll, is the challenge of employee time, right? Even before the pandemic, LinkedIn Learning did a report that said the #1 reason employees are held back from learning is because they just don't have enough time. And you would have thought that with the pandemic, that would have reversed itself. Well, a lot of people were at home in a hybrid model, but instead what we found out was people were tied up in Zoom sessions all day long. And in fact, the Microsoft 2021 Work Index found that the time people spent in meetings and the number of meetings almost more than doubled last year. And at the same time, they were inundated with a much larger volume of electronic communications, emails, Slack, chats, shared documents. So the aspect of this employees being tied up with all of these other distractions meant that conducting long Zoom training on top of that, or pulling people in together, obviously for in-person training, was just not very practical. And this is on top of on the well-known fact that 90% of most training is forgotten about a week after employees leave and never applied. And that in trying to solve this, training teams have really little visibility into the impact of training and who in a given cohort needs more support, who needs to be lifted up to a consistent standard. So Mindmarker is a learning and communication platform. Our SaaS software, combined with instructional designers like JR, transforms training content into microlearning content. And we call these mind markers that are easy to consume in the flow of work. So this is microlearning that employees take with them on the job rather than pulling them out of their daily activities for a long in-classroom training. So to see what that means, Mindmarker starts with an alert. So an employee gets an alert on their phone. We have a native iPhone or Android application, or through an email alert that they can then go access on a web browser app. And it's a Mindmarker is a discrete piece of learning content or learning activity that employees receive at specified intervals over a course of time. This can be one a week. This can be one every other day for a course of 6 weeks, 12 weeks. Some even go for as long as 52 weeks. And this is your learning content from your training programs served in 30 to 90 second bite-sized nudges. And they allow you to introduce the full creativity of your learning programs into these bite-sized nuggets. You can introduce video, audio scenarios, the ability to show learners best practices, scenarios of the right way and the wrong way to do things from a training perspective, as well as the ability to introduce two-way interactions with learners in the form of questions, quizzes, assessments, and even assignments that push learners to go apply learning on the job and report back how it went. And we have games and different types of competitions that we often introduce into programs to help learners show progress and build confidence so they feel comfortable applying the learning. The reason our clients use this is because we do a great job of engaging learners in your training. And employees that go through a Mindmarker program apply learning at a much higher rate, and they allow you to measure the performance and get visibility into how learners are enrolling, completing, understanding the content, and then applying your training content on the job. And because we're able to promote applying learning on the job, it translates into much higher business impact. So some of the results our customers have seen when using Mindmarker in different types of programs range from customer service, customer-facing employees on the phone. One of our clients saw 83% higher customer satisfaction scores from call center employees who went through training with Mindmarker versus those who didn't. We had a webinar back in September with Comcast where they talked about their sales training group that used Mindmarker, and they saw 10% higher sales from those employees that went through a Mindmarker program versus those that did not. They were applying their learning at a much higher rate on live customer calls. Leadership training, you're going to hear some of that from Preston, but 41% higher application from one of our other clients, as well as clients who use us for new hire onboarding or other core trainings. And one of the values they've seen is faster delivery of learning because they're able to rely less on delivering all content in person, and they're allowed to offload some of that content to a Mindmarker program in the form of reinforcement, in the form of additional complementary training, or sometimes they can replace whole sections of training with a Mindmarker program. Some of the clients using us today, where some of you on the phone may have used Mindmarker or heard of us, and that's because we're used by a number of different large organizations, as well as training delivery companies, from companies like Franklin Covey and Korn Ferry to companies like Discover that you're going to hear about today. So with that, before we go, so that's Mindmarker quickly. Before we go on to Preston, I'm going to launch a second poll. So the question, as you see it come up, is how do you reinforce training after employees complete a program? And this time, if you answer, I promise to share the results so that we can see it going into Preston's presentation. Okay, give 6 more seconds. All right, end the poll, and here I'm going to share the results. And the majority of respondents, about 50% of respondents, said they don't currently reinforce most of their training programs, or they rely heavily on managers delivering individual coaching after a training session. Interesting. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Preston. So Preston, you have some interesting background going into this, in that some of the background of the polls where employees don't have time for most training, and that most people aren't doing reinforcement today. So we'll be interested to hear about your experience.
Excellent, Robin. Thanks for having me. And I see a few names on our attendee list. Hello to some of my former colleagues in a prior life. It's good to have some folks out there today. My name is Preston Kendall. I'm one of 2 program managers for leadership development at Discover. So the role that I play, I really run the day-to-day operations for our new leader development program. So if you've just been promoted into your first management role, we want to help upskill you and make that a successful endeavor. I run the day-to-day operations for our director level program. I help out with our metric strategy, a whole host of other things. My passion, though, is about facilitating. It's about how do we get in the classroom, whether that's in person or virtual, which has been the last year and a half of all of our lives. So that's what I was really here to talk about. It's how do we make connections? How do we make content stickier as we go forward? So I'm approaching about 20 years in the training and development background, worked with lots of other organizations, have been a manager of organizational development, talent management consultant, and I'm very happy to be here at Discover. So Rob, if you could advance us to that next one. Just if folks aren't really familiar, Discover is one of the big credit card organizations. We have way more than that out there, right? Checking, savings, loans. We're getting into the home equity business as well. Over 13 billion in revenue, over 17,000 employees, and a simple mission here is to help people spend smarter, manage debt better, and save more so that they can achieve a brighter future. And that just permeates everything in our organization. So Rob, if you want to dig in here a little bit, what I wanted to chat about today was, even when I had joined Discover, and I'm approaching my 4th year now to come up in August this year, we had been on a journey to reinvigorate what at the time was our leadership behavior model. So I know lots of organizations have some kind of a leadership success factors behavior model, whatever it might be. And ultimately, it moved away from the leadership side and it became everybody. So this was started under our former CEO, who ultimately retired. We got our new CEO heavily involved in the development of this, led by our talent management team. And it's really the operating principles for all of our employees. So we have 3 pillars. We have we play to win. And under that, we've got we set ambitious goals. So we want to reach that pinnacle. We take responsibility when it goes well and when it doesn't go well. And we're trying to stay ahead, always scanning the future. It's about getting better every single day, about being curious, about innovating and simplifying, And using Mindmarker has been one of the ways that we've been doing that from our training and development side. And it's about developing ourselves. And our third pillar here is we succeed together. It's the community, right? It's the entire organization. We want to be good partners. We're here to create positive energy with each other. And we're here to develop our team. So Rob, if you could dig in, let me just kind of give a bit of the background on this. So I think most folks know that change takes more than a poster. I've been doing this quite a while, and I've seen some excellent change management practices. I've seen some that needed a little extra help. When we started rolling out these new Discover behaviors, this was not something that was pushed down. These were developed over the course of years. And it's something that, because we wanted to permeate the entire organization, it wasn't a single communication channel. So what was actually led again by that talent management group was a complete change approach. We started going live with this pre-pandemic, so going back to 2019. So if you'd walked into a Discover building, you'd see wall clings, the posters on the walls, every door, screensavers. We have an online assessment that we were asking employees to go through against those behaviors. Even to this day, we're still doing monthly spotlights on our intranet site that include videos from our senior leaders. A couple months ago, I did one for the Innovate and Simplify about Mindmarker. So we're even doing additional facilitator-led training almost a year and a half now after these were introduced for our leaders, just to continue to bring them into the mindset of what these behaviors are all about. It's been embedded in our recognition programs as well as performance management. It's a part of who we are. So Rob, if you could get us into the next slide here, let me just kind of give you the big picture. So officially, we were going live at the tail end of 2019, again, as the result of about 3 years worth of work, multiple focus groups, thousands of employees surveyed for this. And how we rolled this out was every employee was asked to complete, it was about a 25-minute long e-learning module that really took us from where were we and sort of showed the journey of where are we going and how are we going to get there. And as part of this, we knew that we wanted to make it even stickier. We wanted a way to start testing out some new technology, and Mindmarker really fit the bill for us. So we developed a Mindmarker program that would help reinforce what folks were learning in the e-learning. So Rob, if you can get us into the next one, because I think this is really where it makes sense. If you can just backtrack. Oh, there we go. The why reinforcement, just one slide prior. So anytime you're trying to engage company culture, one of the things that we know is that it's not just a passing fad. You know, this was not something that was rushed out. It was something that was extraordinarily deliberately decided upon. And what we wanted to do is if we're setting this expectation for the entire organization, we wanted to make sure that the learning was sticky, that people could just walk away beyond just the e-learning, but to feel like they had some sense of belonging, that they understood the big picture, the why behind this. So the behaviors, if you noticed, they're very descriptive. They're not prescriptive. So we have a few layers underneath that do get a little bit more tactical, but it's still something that you can interpret in different ways depending on the role that you play in our organization. So the reinforcement program, what it did was it helped people lean into how they wanted to display that. And we got some great data, some great feedback about it. Discover has always had a great culture. I can still remember my manager's on this call the day I interviewed with her. Every single thing she told me has absolutely come true almost 4 years later. We just wanted to fine tune some things. So our behaviors really helped us target some areas that we've got some opportunities. And again, it gave us the big picture, the why. So Rob, if you want to get us to that next slide, let me give you just a nickel tour here, folks, of what the program looked like. So after conversing with the rest of our team, we opted to go with a 6-week program. So here in Mindmarker, you can do things for as little as 4 weeks or again, as long as a year. And we didn't want to inundate people every single day. You know, we didn't want to get them to burnout, but we did want to randomize some things. So usually about 2 to 3 days each week during that 6-week program, you'd get a push notification. So you've got a screenshot right in the middle there of sort of the welcome message, sort of if you're choosing to join this one. We can push content. So we had a video. So we've done some really neat video introductions of our behaviors to show what it looks like when you don't use it and what it sounds like when you're actually leaning into them. So we also included some quizzes, some polls, some reflection, even some tasks for folks to go out and complete. The objective that we were really trying to drive is we wanted our employees, our leaders, to deliberately model these behaviors. So to really stop and think in all of my interactions, which of my behaviors am I starting to lean on? Am I leaning on we play to win or we get better every day? So it was really about that piece of it. We worked with our friends at Mindmarker to develop the program, and we've seen some pretty good success based on the pilot. So Rob, if you could get us to the next one. So in our pilot group, it was about 80 to 85 leaders across the organization that joined this. So they went through this program, and what we asked, you'll note right at the top of that, the little graphic here, was in the last 5 working days, how often did you deliberately model the behaviors? So did you consciously think about it? So as a result of these 6-week program, these 2 to 3 messages a week, what we ended up finding was that we had a 12% increase in the number of respondents who said often or always between week 1 and week 6. So we asked the question in week 1, we ask it again at the end of week 6, and therein is our behavior change. So 12% was a good number. It was something that we were really excited to see. Of course, we'd love to keep working on that. We also used Net Promoter Score. Because this was a pilot, we surveyed those who didn't complete the program for various reasons. They gave us a -17. If you're familiar with NPS, that's not a very good number. If you didn't complete it, we got it. They didn't have much to rate us on. Those who did complete the program, we were at a 49. So that's right at that best in class area for NPS. So we felt very, very happy to see those types of results. And what we've been doing with it since is we've been building additional programs to support that new manager offering that I'd mentioned earlier. So we now have 3 separate courses that we teach as instructor-led that have a Mindmarker follow-up reinforcement program. So still in the early works on those ones, starting to see a little bit better results on there. Rob, if you could go ahead and take us to that next slide. So the key learnings, I know we're getting close to some Q&A time here. Here's what we've really learned is that changing ingrained behavior, the leadership behaviors that we had prior to our new everyone behaviors were in place greater than 15 years. We know that just can't be addressed in a single sitting. We also know, and based on the poll that Rob did at the beginning, people are busy, right? You think that working from home would give you a little extra time, but it just means you don't have to worry about commute, which means you can be on more calls and do more work. So people really like these small bursts. And getting a little nudge, it was just enough to kind of help people get over that edge. I still make it a practice to send a follow-up email after every course I facilitate. So the next morning I'll send out, hey, here's what we covered. Here's all the links that you can use going forward. That's just not sustainable the way Mindmarker is. We do course evaluations for everything we teach. And we also find that employees, they want some way to reconnect. They wanted a way to stay in touch with the content. And being able to do this on a scalable session is really a great thing. Not to mention, there are definitely a few people who like the competition side of the business. So that has really been our journey with Mindmarker. It's been a lot of fun. The pandemic kind of gave us a little bit of hiccup in our original rollout plans as we all had to pivot to being able to facilitate online, which kind of put some of our development cycle a little bit back. But I would be happy, Rob, if you want to go to the Q&A slide, and let's see what I can help folks with. Yeah, so I see there was in the Q&A, the 12% injuries that is self-reported. That is definitely the one thing. So,
and hey, Preston, could you repeat that question? Just
sorry,
before, yeah.
Yeah, the question was...
Some people can't see. Some of the questions only come to the panelists.
Okay, so the question was the 12% increase, was it based on honest answers or was there some other way that we know that they were observed behavior? That is not something that we got into in terms of true observed sort of level 3 behavior. So this was self-reported. It was, okay, at the beginning of the program and at the end of the program. And one of the things that I think we found is that while it would be hard to prove, I think we may have found a few people who overinflated how often they deliberately used on the front end. And then throughout their 6-week journey on the back end, they realized maybe I wasn't quite as deliberate about that as I had thought I was. So, JR, did you want to pose any other questions? It looks like there might be some chat stuff in there. I don't want to bypass.
Sure, yeah, I'll be happy to. I'll be happy to. Yeah, we do have a few questions coming via the chat. One of them is, do you have any insights on how the learners apply these behaviors?
You know, at this point, it's really the anecdotal side of the business. So we are clearly seeing, we're a year and a half into the rollout of the behaviors, even a little more than that. On our employee opinion surveys, we ask a question of, have you received coaching on the Discover behaviors within the last 30 days? That number is somewhere north of 85% of employees have received coaching. So their leaders make this a standard practice to talk about behaviors. We include it in all of the training courses that we lead. It's something that we onboard our training vendors to so that we really can make those connections for folks.
All right, perfect. We have a couple more questions that are related to the key learnings, right? So someone said, hey, I agree with the key learnings, but what is the response when it comes to the amount of push messages per week, right? Some people are concerned about, that there's too many, the cadence is too fast, or there's too many messages going on. Do you have any experience or anything you can share around that? And I can even tap in after you to provide some feedback.
Yeah, that is one of the things, and I'm pulled up the slide of what did you find most valuable about the Mindmarker program. So in our pilot, here's some of the comments. I like that the instructions were quick and easy, didn't feel intrusive to my day. I was able to fit it in without blocking my calendar. I could participate while eating lunch. I love that it was on my mobile device. The awareness component. So, I had a leader 2 years ago that showed me 100,000 unread emails in his inbox. I get that they're busy, right? People are swamped, especially if you work in the BT or IT type of an area. The mind markers, because of the way you guys have built them, that they're short. We don't want them to take any more than 2 minutes to actually read. They really are easy. And if somebody doesn't want to do it, swipe it away and it's there for you when you go back, when you get your next message. So it has been a really good way for us to stay in touch with folks. And again, the metrics on the back end are really helpful to kind of see who's participating, how are they doing. With the quiz questions, we can get a sense of, is the organization understanding what we're asking? Can they make those connections? So I hope that one helps, JR.
No, absolutely helps, and hopefully the panelists will agree. I mean, the person would agree. But some of the things we've done, with our tool and our software, you control the cadence, right? It's always important. Yeah, it's always important to study your audience and know what works for them, right? I mean, maybe for some, a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 a.m. works. But if you have meetings, standing meetings going on, so that's the beautiful thing about the Mindmarker platform that allows you to accommodate your audience based on your own preferences. All right, let's see what else we have in here. So when it comes to creating a reinforcement program, is there a specific type of training that you think reinforcement should be applied to?
That one is sort of, I think, personal to all of us who do this work. I think we all have some insights on that. For us, in the way I view it, is anytime you're working with other human beings, I focus on leadership development. I focus on how do we build great leaders who are more human, who can empathize with people, who can understand how to tap into to get the best out. And I think for us, it's really about when you've got these softer skills, people are running a mile a minute to get it done. They sometimes forget the how piece. Okay, yes, we still need to get results. It's also the how do we go about it. We don't want to, churn your team over. And if we can give you that momentary pause to look at a mind marker for our coaching program that says, hey, don't forget to stop and ask questions. Don't just give them the answer. Like, your job as a leader is to help them develop, not just to give them the fish, so to speak. So I think anytime that we're looking for this, and I know Rob mentioned Comcast and some of the sales program, we're starting to look at it potentially as a reinforcement for our new call center agents. It's not quite solidified yet. We're in some conversations with that team to see if maybe this would be a good use for them. If you think about onboarding new call center folks, they have so much to learn and it's such a short amount of time to get up to speed to deliver and to deliver on the brand promise on how we treat our customers and to maintain that level of service. So I think it kind of depends on what your outcomes are. But if you've got experience with a program and you're not seeing the end result, people are putting the book back on the shelf, right? That's what we're talking about. It's how do we get them to pull that book back down? And short of us sending out emails every couple of weeks, Mindmarker does all that for us. And again, you can get some really creative stuff in that system.
Absolutely. Thank you, Preston. And I completely agree. I think anybody in learning and development, you're absolutely right. I think it's a shift of the mindset. I mean, reinforcement should always be part of a continuous learning journey, right? I mean, every training program should be reinforced, whether it's post delivery of a face-to-face or virtual type of environment, or just be part of it. One of the things we've seen a lot of our partners and clients incorporate, specifically now with this virtual setting, is, use the Mindmarker platform to be part of a blended approach. Don't wait until after, don't sell it to be a post. Just make it part of the entire agenda, so the learner knows, okay, it's not something else. It is part of my continuous development and learning when it comes to to applying this.
Yeah, and JR, that's right. At the beginning of the courses that we facilitate that we have a Mindmarker reinforcement or any of the other tools that might be used out there, we make it a point at the beginning, at the middle, and at the end, and then the follow-up. Hey, folks, again, it's not one and done. We want you to stay connected. We don't want you to walk out of here and then lose 90% of what we've talked about. We want to get that number as small as possible. You don't have to retain everything, but it's a great way, again, to keep it top of mind. And if you're thinking about it, you're going to do something about it.
Absolutely. All right, I believe those are all the questions that came so far through the Q&A and the chat. If anyone has anything else to add, great. If not, Rob, I'll pass it along to you.
Yeah. Hey, Preston, I have one last question for you. I didn't prep you for this, but given, I know, a little off-road.
It's all good.
Hey, given just we're coming off the pandemic and it's L&D groups are trying to readjust to normal. How are you approaching the decision of when to go back to in-person learning versus committing to doing virtual models or using things like Mindmarker to deliver training?
It's a great question. We take our guidance first off from the large organization, and it's just really been within the last couple of weeks that we've officially announced that we are willing to reopen all of our locations across the country. They're still going to be held to about 50% capacity, at least for the near term. We have to sign an attestation form to make sure, okay, who's vaccinated, who might not be, who may not want to tell us, and then what are the protocols. Part of that, though, is that any in-person meeting has to be made available to remote folks as well. So from a technology standpoint, our group, we're not quite at the place where we can do the true blended, where I'm in a classroom and I've got 10 people in a room and 15 elsewhere across the country. That's probably the next evolution. We are getting more and more requests now to come back on site to deliver training. We just opened a new center in Chatham, Illinois, and they're doing all of their sessions live and in person. So they're also masked, they're also socially distant. So it just, we're really trying to work through this. It's going to be interesting to see how it all turns out. I'm fascinated. I think the pandemic escalated the need for not just the remote learning, the virtual learning, but the blended approach as well. And it just, we're all going to have to work through that. It's a whole new spin. I think I may have mentioned, in 2019, my end of year, like my development plan, I said in 2020, I want to teach at least one class virtually. I don't know what I was thinking. But we did way more than one class virtually last year. I think we did about 15 in person up through March, and then that was it afterwards. So now it's how do we bring both of those things to a great employee experience?
Yeah.
Jared, do we have any other
Q&A? Yeah, another question came in. This is more directed towards us here at Mindmarker. Does Mindmarker manage and create the follow-ups, or does the company purchasing doing it? And how do we communicate with the companies to work with? So basically, that is a model that we have here internally at Mindmarker. We can actually reach out to you separately and elaborate on that, but we have both options, okay? You can work with a group of designers here at Mindmarker, like Preston did right at the very beginning. We will show you all the tricks and anything you need to know to build programs. We will build the first program for you. That's an option. But anyway, we can talk more in details. us, but both options are on the table. We can do a trainer and teach your staff, or if you want us to build the programs, we have a great group of designers here within Mindmarker that can help you accomplish so.
Yeah, I'll say you guys were great supporting, to help us out with that first one. And once you kind of understand that the methodology, it became a whole lot easier. It's just that first time, right? The first step is always the tough one. And then once you figure it out, life is good. Anything else I can help out with today, folks?
Let's see. We're clear on the Q&A.
Right. Well, hey, Preston, thank you so much for stepping up and talking about your program. We look forward to hoping a year from now to be able to have you another opportunity to hear from you to see how subsequent programs have gone.
Agreed. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, and for everyone else, we're going to do more programs like this. So our goal is to do one of these about every 2 months, where we have another leader come on to speak about their own programs and just the challenges they're facing from learning and development. We're also posting on our new website. We just launched a new website. We haven't told anyone yet, so don't tell anyone, but we launched it. And if you want to go see what the new Mindmarker looks like, go ahead, and that'll be a great stop for content we're going to be publishing in the next few months about best practices around microlearning, around reinforcement, and profiling other customers like Preston, and how they are using Mindmarker to reach remote distributed employees that just don't have as much time as they used to have for in-person and Zoom training. So Preston, JR, thank you very much for your time today. And we will send out a follow-up to everyone who attended today with the recording of the webinar so you can share it with your colleagues.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, everybody.
Thanks,
Preston.
Preston. Take care,
Bye.
guys.
Thanks, JR.